A few years ago, I had a dream that reshaped the way I think about death and the nature of reality itself. So, what if a dream revealed the structure of the afterlife, not as a final destination, but a transition space shaped in our own consciousness? And what does this have to do with the Tibetan Book of the Dead? With this light, the circle of the month opens. The lantern is lit, and so the journey begins, illuminated by the light of our curiosity. In mysticism, we step into the world of symbols, archetypes, and the subconscious mind. What matters is not the literal truth, but how these ideas help us navigate fear, illusion, and healing. So, what is this insane dream that challenged my sense of reality at such a fundamental, profound level? Well, a few years ago, I went on a cruise with my sibling. I'd only been on like one or two in my whole life, but I was getting antsy with life at that time and found a great deal on a repositioning transatlantic cruise. It was meant to be really relaxing and peaceful, and it was. A week or so in, I went to bed as usual, but then I found myself in the strangest, most realistic dream. It was partially lucid, I would say, with me understanding that I was still Jazz, but I was watching this little girl, and in front of her were these parents and her older sister, and they all seemed huge and menacing. And the little girl was cowering and scared. The parents looming over her weren't twisted or monstrous, but they looked like monsters to her because of the anger and the way they were sneering at her. And I could feel all those feelings that she was feeling in that moment. I could feel her deep fear. And I realized that she was me from another time, another life. I look at the ominous shapes looming over her, and I put my hand on her shoulder, and I tell her, this isn't real. She looks at me with large, scared eyes, but the images disappear instantly. Suddenly, we have merged into a single being and a guiding presence. It appears, it feels feminine with a kind of a compassionate but stern energy. She guides us through this now empty space until we come to the edge of a beautiful valley. The sun is shining bright between the two mountains ahead of me, and the clouds are puffy and white like in a storybook. And a river shimmers off into the horizon. But suddenly, I'm alone. The guide's not there anymore. And the sky between the mountains cracks open like shattered glass. And there's blackness behind it. And I feel myself being pulled into it. This is the moment I realized I had died in my sleep on that cruise ship. I was so shocked. I kept saying, more in awe than in fear, wow, I actually died. So this is what death is like. I'm hovering now over the fracture in the sky, and in its darkness, I can see this tunnel. And below, I see Earth and all the continents and the vast blue Atlantic Ocean, where I know somewhere down there on a ship, my body is laying on a bed. Then it's like I'm slingshotted towards the earth. And all I can think is, I hope I get better parents this time. As soon as I slam into earth, I wake up in the bed on the cruise ship. I'm confused for a moment, wondering where I am. It had felt like ages in that strange dream. And when I realized where I was and who I was flooded with relief. I was so happy I got to be Jazz for just a little while longer. Needless to say, this dream was a wild and intense ride. But what does this dream have to do with the Tibetan Book of the Dead? Before we dive into that, if you're new here or if you just want to understand how the Mystic's Lantern works as a monthly ritual, there's an orientation video linked below or on my channel. If this content is compelling, please consider liking and subscribing so that you can follow the entire monthly Mystics Lantern cycle. The Bardo Todo, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing, also known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, is a funerary text recited aloud to guide consciousness after death. It means liberation through understanding in the between. It is spoken, not read, because in this tradition, it is believed that consciousness can still hear what is said after death. In Buddhism, suffering comes from attachment, craving, and fear. In fact, the first noble truth is often said to be, all life is suffering. However, I had a Buddhist teacher once tell me that the concept was closer to all life is perpetual dissatisfaction. And that always made more sense to me for some reason. On the other side, enlightenment means liberation. Without it, rebirth continues over and over again. There are many realms, many states of consciousness, maybe literal, maybe symbolic. So why is a funerary text about liberation read after a person dies? Well, it's because the words spoken are meant to help that consciousness of the dead who, remember, can still hear us, that the place they have landed in, or the Bardos, is a state of illusion, which is a projection of their own minds and fears. When these projections are in front of a soul, they seem real and can be filled with horrible imagery or visions of heaven. But ultimately, they are all the same. Illusions projected from a mind that isn't used to instant manifestation of thought. The goal is to recognize the Bardo state immediately after death and to achieve liberation from the illusion, therefore stopping the cycle of rebirth by recognizing the ultimate truth of reality, or at least hopefully attain a better rebirth. There are 3 stages of the Bardos of death, and in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it can take up to 49 days between death and rebirth. This time is meant to give a soul the space to reflect back on its life and to encounter the nature of reality as a direct experience. The first Bardo is the moment of death. This is the recognition that one has passed on. If there is going to be a sort of life review, it will happen now. There is a more intense review coming up in the second Bardo, but it's very different, and we'll get to that in a moment. This moment after death could be a moment of profound clarity or extreme fear or even confusion. There is supposedly a moment here where the true nature of reality becomes clear, and if embraced in that moment, the soul could be liberated from the cycle of reincarnation or samsara. If the soul is scared or confused, it might miss this moment, and therefore it would proceed to the second Bardo. The second Bardo is the projection of illusions from your own mind. This is your second chance to recognize that you are trapped in a karmic loop. Peaceful and terrifying visions will arise instantly around you, attuned to your thoughts, because your thoughts are instantly manifested in this second Bardo, all projections of one's own mind. This is like a life review of your state of mind and your emotions rather than your actions as experienced in the first Bardo. And if you can step out of your own thought pattern enough to recognize the illusory state, if you recognize this, it could lead to liberation. Souls who get scared, lost, or confused in this stage proceed to the third Bardo. The third Bardo is the path to rebirth. Since the soul failed to recognize its true nature in the first 2 Bardos, consciousness moves towards a new life, seeking out a new physical form. This new life will be shaped by accumulated karma. And remember here that karma is not the Western idea of some higher power passing judgment. Karma is the natural consequence or results of an action. If you kick a chair, you hurt your foot, that's the natural consequence of kicking a chair, not a punishment from an outside source, right? So this is the final chance to achieve liberation or to improve one's rebirth through recognition and understanding. This Bardo lasts the longest and ends the moment you take your first breath in your new body. I'm not claiming that I traveled to the Bardos that night, or that I really died, or that it was a memory between my lives. It could be, or maybe it was just me tapping into the collective archetypal unconscious. Either way, doesn't matter. I discovered the Bardos because of research done after this dream. In my dream, the little girl who I merged with saw her parents as larger than life, ominous, monstrous. How often in life do we see things like this? Remember when we were kids and things seemed so big, even if objectively it was really no big deal? How often do we do that today? How often do we blow things out of proportion now? In my dream, the little girl's parents were so critical of her in life that in her death projection of them, she manifested them as monsters. But how often do we see subtle monsters in our own lives that aren't as big and scary as they seem to be in our minds? Recognizing illusions dissolves it, not just in the Bardos or in some dream realm, but here, now, in this realm. And honestly, I feel like the more you heal and work through these things in this world, the less likely you'll get trapped in the illusion of the second Bardo. And even if this is just all a metaphor and not literal, won't all of these things just improve your life anyway? The valley in my dream was the transitional world, a liminal space where my consciousness saw the illusions of beauty, but the illusion was shattered, literally, when the sky broke open. And my seed of incarnation, as I was flung down to earth, I hope I get better parents. Not as a fear exactly, but as a sort of a last minute breath of hope, I think. So what does this all mean for us now? The point isn't proving the afterlife or what it looks like. It's about opening our inner eyes so that we can live a better life now. And so that when the day comes, we can transition peacefully and without fear. If thought becomes form instantly there and slowly here, then teaching yourself the framework of inner healing now is training you to face that instant manifestation of illusion in the Bardos. Unhealed fear shapes our lives, but focusing on inner healing and dispelling illusions here reshapes our perceptions and our entire lives for the better. I'm less interested in literal truth and more interested in asking, if our thoughts and wounds shape the next world, how would we choose to heal and love ourselves today? That is a lot to sit with. And you have your own 7-day cycle to reflect on it until next Tuesday, when we expand upon this with a simple elemental magical ritual to carry your intentions on the wind. If you wish to actively work alongside me, all you'll need is 4 small pieces of paper or cloth and something to write or draw with. And so, mystic travelers, I would love to hear your opinions in the comments below. What do you think happens in the afterlife? Does everything melt away based on your religious or spiritual path? Or do the things we carry that weigh us down in life push harder to be seen and dealt with on the other side? The circle remains open. I'll see you next week, mystic travelers.